When it comes to content repurposing, we often focus on our highest quality published, polished content. But what about our more unpolished or raw content? Because I would argue that content contains high value and authentic content that our audience long for and we should be repurposing. So listen on to hear more about unpolished content and how to make the most of it. You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Content 10x podcast. I'm Amy Woods, the founder of Content 10x, and in this episode, I'm going to look at the often neglected, unpolished content that doesn't always make it into our repurposing plans. So this includes things like our internal team meetings, interviews with subject matter experts, conversations with advisory boards, training and development sessions, town halls, sales calls, customer interviews, candid conversations taking place on your posts. I'm sure you get the gist. This content is raw, it's not fit to be published just yet since it's not been reviewed and refined and so on, but it is ideal for repurposing. So in this episode, I'm going to cover what unpolished content is versus polished, why it's so valuable, and some ideas on how to repurpose it effectively. But first, before I get to the main content, do you often appear as a guest on other people's podcasts or webinars, for example? These opportunities to show your expertise and get involved in other people's content create great content for you, and we want to help you make the most of these appearances. So we've put together the ultimate guide to repurposing your guest appearance. It's everything you need to know to be able to maximize these opportunities, and you can download it for free from our website. Just head to content10x.com/guest-appearance. The link will be in the show notes, and I hope you find it useful. So as I was saying, I want to look at the repurposing opportunities presented by unpolished content. This was inspired by one of Devin Reed's brilliant emails that he sends out every week, where he was talking about scaling output using content waterfalls and making sure you consider your polished content and unpolished content. Now, Devin Reed is the head of content at Clary. He was a guest on season 1 of our other podcast, B2B Content Strategist, so go check that out. It was episode 6 of B2B Content Strategist. When it comes to repurposing, we often focus mainly on the polished content in our content arsenal. That includes things like a podcast episode, blog posts, webinar series, and so on. This content is in top shape, it's already published or it's ready for publish. Repurposing your polished content should be fairly straightforward because you've already signed off on the content and the message since it's published already or soon to be published, so you know anything repurposed from it should be good to go too. But then there's the unpolished content that is created often even on a daily basis, the stuff we don't always view as even content necessarily. As I mentioned earlier, this could be internal strategy sessions, roundtable events, training sessions, sales calls, it could be town halls, internal video calls, and so on. This type of content will often include more informal conversations, and as such, it's authentic, candid, and insightful, which are 3 things your audience are after, making this content ideal for repurposing. Now, I provide some examples of the types of video that are ideal for repurposing in episode 243 of this podcast. It's called 10 Types of Videos Your Business Should Repurpose. A number of those videos in that episode are examples of unpolished content, so it could be helpful to take a listen to that. Just head to content10x.com/243. If we're not talking about unpolished video content, then here's some other examples. So maybe it's a transcript from a strategy session or a roundtable event that you could repurpose into LinkedIn posts or tweets. Perhaps audio segments from your town hall could become audiograms, or that content could also become a blog post. So just a few examples of unpolished content and how you can repurpose it. But why is unpolished content so valuable? Now, as we know, consumers value brand authenticity more than ever, and they can sniff out anything overproduced and inauthentic from a mile away. All the research shows that authenticity is a hugely important part of the customer journey. If you don't relate to a brand's content, then you're not going to support the brand. It's as simple as that if you break it down. So that's why when we get the unpolished content and we repurpose it, we can really shine and show that authenticity. So how do you make the most of this type of content? Now, unpolished or raw content can't just be repurposed or recycled in the same way that you would with polished content, with finished, final, fully edited and reviewed, either published or ready to publish content. Maybe it can sometimes, but usually it'll need to be reworked and finessed before you can send it out into the world. My advice is, and always is, when you are repurposing polished or unpolished content, is to look for angles. So look for those conversation starters, look for the stories within the content, insights, different perspectives on the topics, and repurpose this content into new formats. Be creative. For example, on LinkedIn, you could turn conversations into a social media poll or post, inviting your audience to engage in the discussion. This discussion itself will create more unpolished and polished content, ideal for repurposing sometime in the future too. So it's the great repurposing cycle that keeps on giving. It's important to follow your usual repurposing principles, of course. So making sure that you change content format, staying in line with your brand guidelines, and also staying in line with the platform and making sure the content is platform specific. Plus, it's important to create zero-click value-add content from your unpolished archives too. So content that isn't a tease, doesn't require a click to find out the main point or the punchline, but content that stands alone and adds value in its own right and doesn't need anyone to click anywhere to get value from it. So make sure there's lots of that zero-click content within your unpolished content repurposing plans. So just to recap, unpolished content is raw content that hasn't yet been refined and published. It's what you're left with after the informal conversations that then create really valuable ideas and insights. It just needs to be finessed to get the repurposing ready. You can repurpose this content using your usual repurposing principles, ensuring it aligns with your content pillars and overall strategy, and maintaining your quality standards. The result is a wealth of authentic content that your audience will love. Now, if you need help with your content repurposing, then at Content 10x, we offer a fully done-for-you content repurposing service for B2B businesses. Just head to content10x.com/services to find out more about what we do and how we might be able to help you. Okay, that's a wrap for this episode. I hope it's inspired you and you're going to go and look at that unpolished content that you have and realize the repurposing potential within it. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening. Happy repurposing, and I'll catch you in the next one.